my name is Megan Mishra, and I'll be going over the sociolinguistic topic of gendered language in Japanese. We'll start with a key research question, which is, what does gendered speech in Japanese look like? What are the expectations for men and women in Japanese society? How does this reflect in their language, and why does it matter? We'll start by discussing women's versus men's speech. In Japanese, differences between gendered speech are stark and are codified in a formal set of rules. The distinction is between onna kotoba, or women's speech, and otoko kotoba, or men's speech. These are historical terms that have existed for hundreds of years, setting forth a standardized expectation for the ways that men and women should speak. Generally, this is more scrutinized in women, so that's what I'll be focusing on. Momoko Nakamura's 2014 book, Gender, Language, and Ideology, states that the historical codification of women's speech stems from the unique 14th century speech used by noble women in Japan's imperial court, called Nyobo Kotoba, or court lady speech. This led to the overall idea of women's speech. Per Miyako Inoue's 2002 article, Gender, Language, and Modernity, women's speech is considered to be a reflection of a woman's innate femininity within modern society, and something of a natural phenomenon, though whether or not this is true has yet to be seen. Women's speech, both historically and today, can be summarized by a couple of key metrics, namely, avoiding vulgar language, choosing to use a more particular feminine vocabulary, a different use of pronouns, the use of specific sentence final particles, and an overall sense of politeness. With this context, let's look at how gendered speech exists in Japanese today. I'll be using two main examples of this. The first is regarding pronouns in Japanese. In English, we just have one first-person pronoun I, but Japanese has several that speakers can pick from and use in various contexts, all of which connote a gendered identity. Similarly, second-person pronouns differ by gender. These differences intersect with different levels of formality or politeness, and as a general rule, women tend to use more formal speech more often to comply with the expectation that Japanese women are supposed to be polite. What's considered plain or standard speech for women is often seen as formal speech when used by a man. We can look at this pronoun chart to get an idea of this. The formal pronoun watashi is used in everyday speech by women, but only in formal contexts by men. The extremely informal ore is used near exclusively by men, and is historically considered to be an example of vulgar language, though now is pretty common among young men with their peers. What's important to note is that women do not have a first-person pronoun in this most informal category, because historically women are expected to stay away from any language that could be perceived as vulgar. Even though the chart is arranging pronouns by formality, not gender, because the two are so heavily linked, the pattern still emerges. It's a similar story with the second-person pronouns. One thing to notice is how two of these second-person pronouns, kimi and omae, are listed as male, but none are listed as female. This is because it's considered impolite in Japanese to address someone with a second-person pronoun at all. In formal settings, you'd refer to the person you're speaking to by their last name or title. Women, who are again expected to be more formal in everyday speech than men, therefore use second-person pronouns far less often. This is to the point that anata, the most formal second-person pronoun, is often considered to be a term of endearment used by a wife to her husband, as it's only after marriage that a woman would easily address a man directly with a second-person pronoun. Another example of gendered speech in Japanese is sentence final particles. In Japanese, these are particles added to the ends of sentences to convey meaning in the form of tone. For instance, some are used to add an idea of assertiveness. Take the particle daio. When the whole thing is used, it conveys a sense of authority. The particle da is what does this. It denotes that the speaker is emphasizing that they're telling the truth. When da is omitted, and it just becomes yo, it's considered woman's speech, as instead of being a aggressive seeming insistence that the speaker is telling the truth, the sentence just becomes a presentation of opinion. Pitch intersects with these particles as well. The final particle wa has two different vibes based on if it's said with a rising tone, which is feminine, or a falling tone, which is neutral. An interesting phenomenon to note within modern Japan is the increasing use of masculine particles zen and zo by women. After going through these gender differences, the question remains, so what? We still have to answer the second part of the research question from earlier, why does this matter? I'd argue that this matters because the role of women within society reflects in the language they use. Japan is a patriarchal society. According to Sachiko Ide's article, How and Why Do Women Speak More Politely in Japanese?, most features of women's speech exist to begin with due to expectations of politeness in women. This comes from a long history in gender differentiation between the roles of men and women in Japanese society. Modern Japan is seeing a slow push away from this, with more masculine speech patterns like the sentence final particles becoming gender neutral as women gain more agency in Japanese society. For example, by entering the workforce, with the Japanese workforce in 2024 being 45.1% female per the World Bank. There's a lot I wasn't able to cover, so I'm going to end this with some final questions. The prevailing belief among Japanese scholars has been that these gender differences are biological. Are they really a natural reflection of biological differences between men and women? Or are these expectations that are taught to Japanese youth as they grow up? To that end, if they really were innate patterns, would these change? Why would these change as women enter the workforce? And lastly, what could this mean for the overall Japanese language, which is characterized by its notion of politeness and formality, if gender differences begin to fade away? Thank you so much for listening.